Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. Today is September 16th, the beginning of the fall 2022 semester. And I welcome you to Friday SLO Talks. This is our sixth semester of these talks. My name is Jarek Janio. I'm the faculty coordinator at Santa Ana College, School of Continuing Education. And with the arrival of COVID, I have started the Friday SLO Talks, and this is the beginning of the sixth semester. As we started talking about assessment of student learning, which, as you know, is not an easy topic to tackle, it became clear to me that we need more than just set of brilliant presentations or insightful conversations. We need an outcome, a guideline, a scaffolding, a system that will help us, faculty, and more importantly, our students, to see, to understand what we are teaching and what our students are learning. Friday SLO Talks became a space where discussions on these topics could be taking place. I knew we were on the right track when I received an email from one of the attendees that was back in March, April 2020, saying that thanks to the Friday Talks, she knew what to do on Monday morning. This idea of making these webinars result in an outcome has been a beacon for all of this time. And today, I would like to share with you a guide to student learning assessment, which I'm going to share in just a minute in the chat. You can download it and share it. It's a collaborative work of people from throughout the spectrum of higher education designed to help us to stay focused on student learning and make it visible. The series of fall 2022 Friday SLO Talks that we are starting right now, today, will explore the 6 steps for implementation of student learning outcomes assessment practices. And today, we call this webinar Coordinators Training, because we are going to give you an overview of those 6 steps. I am joined by my colleagues, faculty and faculty leaders, coordinators from community colleges in California, to present and to share how they make assessment of student learning a meaningful and relevant tool in their daily practice. Please welcome the California Outcomes Assessment Coordinators Hub, or COACHES for short. And now I would like the presenters to introduce themselves. Enrique, if we could have the second slide with everyone's name there, it would just be fantastic. Is Don here? I'm sorry.
No, he's not.
Okay, that's fine. Then. No problem at all. So here we are. Bethany Tasaka from San Bernardino Valley College. Please, would you please say a few words about yourself?
Sure. I hope everyone understands my camera will be off today. I'm in a different location with less sturdy Wi-Fi, but my name is Bethany Tasaka. I'm out of San Bernardino Valley College. I am a brand new curriculum chair this semester, and I've been working as the outcomes faculty lead at my campus going on, I think, 4 years now. It's been a little while. And just speaking personally, this group was so helpful to me. I kind of got thrown in on the deep end, and it was really, really beneficial to just hear other perspectives and what other colleges are doing. And it made a huge difference for me in my role. So looking forward to today.
Excellent. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for all your work and support. Alicia Betancourt, San Diego City College, please.
Good morning. I am actually the brand new faculty assessment coordinator for San Diego City College. I have worked with outcomes before, but this is a brand new role for me. And I am also a psychology adjunct at the college. And I've been teaching for about 6 years. And I just really have gained so much from this group already. And I'm really looking forward to all of these talks this semester as I try to implement new ways of looking at student learning outcomes at City College.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alicia. Shannon Jessen, Chaffey College.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to Jarek and Enrique and the team for including me in the distinction of coaches. So I am the SLO coordinator, if you will. We call it by a different name at Chaffey College, but in any case, so I was on the committee before assuming more of a leadership role. And my role was to sort of take over right about the time we were completely changing the way we assess at Chaffey College. So I will be sharing in these Friday SLO talks today about alignment and in the future, as well as also talking a little bit about how we rolled out our process at Chaffey College and how we are trying to streamline assessment and make it fit with everything else that our college is trying to do, rather than have it be a sort of additional task. And so I'll be talking a lot about that. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Shannon. Grace Estrada, Evergreen Valley College.
Hi, everyone. So I am Grace, and I am the SLO coordinator and psychology faculty at Evergreen. This is my second year as SLO coordinator, and I definitely understand how it can be really overwhelming, this position. And I found these SLO talks extremely helpful. Getting the insight of others and just hearing the different perspectives was really beneficial. So I'm hoping that to give back as well and learn from everyone. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Grace. Tricia Wilging, Long Beach City College.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tricia Wilging. I teach in the Reading and Teacher Preparation Department at Long Beach City College, and I have been the SLO coordinator since March of 2020. I took on the role about 3 weeks before we all went home, and so that was an interesting way to begin my work in this role. But I have come to discover that I really enjoy assessment work. I think it can be so meaningful, so I'm just really looking forward to these Friday SLO talks. I appreciate the invitation to share with you all about the work of Long Beach City College. And I also look forward to learning from you all about the work at your institution. So thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thank you so much, Tricia. Patty Manley, San Diego Miramar College.
Good morning, everyone. I am the Program Review and Outcomes Assessment Facilitator. It is almost a full-time position at Miramar College in San Diego. I also am a tenured faculty in the Social Sciences History Department, so I teach as well. I am excited to kind of, as Tricia said, to give back, and Grace said to give back, because I also I've been in this position 2 years, and before that I was the chair of the Program Review and Outcomes Committee for Instruction. The position I'm in now is a campus-wide position, so I cover all areas, not just instruction. So I'm excited to give back and to meet everyone and to hear how everybody else is doing it as well. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Patty. And last but certainly not least, Enrique Hariki, Fresno City College. The two of us are going to be moderating today's discussion. Enrique, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Enrique Hariki. I'm the SLO coordinator for Fresno City College, and I am grateful to be in the presence of all these SLO coordinators. Wonderful to be working and collaborating with them. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you very much for your ongoing support, sir. Gosh, Tom Himes is here. Good morning. How are you, Tom? Good to see you. And Michelle Dunbar. Hello. It's always good to see all, well, gosh, good old friends. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Before we do, just one aspect of logistics. Yes, this webinar is being recorded. We are going to make it available to everyone through our website and YouTube channel. And also the slide decks are going to be available as well. So we are going to put everything together in a nice package, and we are going to send them via listservs, and together with the guide, we'll spread the word. Without further ado, step number one of our guide, Bethany Tasaka, course content analysis, curriculum, and syllabus. Huge topics. Please.
It should be quick, no problem, right? Should be simple and to the point.
Right.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. I always lose where this presentation button is. There it is at the bottom. Set. There we go. So as we've said so already, Today we're talking about the 6 steps for SLO implementation, and I have step 1. And I was reading through our guide that we've created over the years, and I had a quote that kind of stuck out to me. Let's see if there we go. And I thought I'd just start us off with this. Therefore, if SLOs originate with the course content, what are faculty teaching if not SLOs? We could probably attribute that quote to Yarrick directly, right? I know he had a huge hand in putting that learning assessment guide together. But it's really just trying to start off with this thought that what we're doing is really directly tied together, right? They aren't separate processes. It's not course content over here and a syllabus over there and curriculum over there and SLOs somewhere else, right? These are all connected to each other. And so I just want to kind of start us off with that thought. And moderators, feel free to interrupt me if there's stuff going on in the chat at any time. So as I said before, my name is Bethany Tasaka. I'm not quite as new to the outcomes world. At my campus, we call it outcomes faculty lead, but it's something I really come to enjoy over the last couple of years. And I'm excited actually to have this topic because I recently am stepping into the curriculum chair position as well. So I get a different perspective of it. So there's two kind of, or just kind of thinking, broadly, why should we start with this course content? Why is this a good place to start? And I want to kind of guide our thinking into, there's really 2 things, 2 outcomes. We kind of use competencies interchangeably there that we see within our course content. There's a theory aspect of it, and there's a practice aspect to it. And both of those are very important, and they might be weighted a little differently according to your discipline, right? I come from a math discipline. I would argue both of these are pretty equally important in math, but in some of your disciplines, one might be more heavily weighted than the other. But the intent here is at the end of our courses, right, we want to assess outcomes. And I want to emphasize so that both students and faculty know, right? We also want to make sure students are aware, what are the theoretical concepts that they need to know and really master, right? Not even just have an awareness of, but how well do they know those theoretical concepts? And then what can they apply? What can they put into practice, show you in terms of demonstrated skills? And just kind of tying together this idea that grades are not always going to directly represent what these 2 pieces are. And that's why we have these outcomes a little separate. We know that they're, often tied to assignments, but it's why we really want to focus on outcomes. So a really great place to start is with the course outline of record. Other areas might call it a slightly different thing, but there should be some sort of official publication that's posted to a campus website. In the California Community College system, we call it the course outline of record. And this is a legal document for us in California. Here you'll find things like course content. For my campus, the SLOs do live on the course outline of record. I don't know if everyone does the same thing there. You might find objectives, you might find various pieces, textbooks, right? There's a lot of things that go into the course outline of record. But it's a really great place to start when you're trying to develop your student learning outcomes. When we develop our course content as faculty, right, we have all these things that we want our students to learn. It kind of becomes this huge list, all the things that they should know, right? But once you have that list, we kind of want to flip the question a little bit and ask, well, how do we know of those things? How do we know what they've actually learned? How do we know what pieces they were able to master, right? And that's where SLOs come in. So really take time to sit and look at your course outline of record. I'll probably say this more than once, but I really recommend doing this with other people, not doing it by yourself. Work with your department, work with your curriculum committee. Look at your course outline of record and sit and think, what are the concepts? What are the skills? What things do students really need to master as a result of this class? And the reason why that course outline of record is so helpful is because it's where our content outlines really live. Are we doing okay with questions?
Yes.
No? Good. All right.
Bethany, just one comment here that comes to mind, that for some other agencies, course outline of record may have a different designation, but what we are referring to here is the document, as you already said it, with that really describes course content. It's the official document that's usually approved by the higher governing bodies, curriculum committees and such.
Yeah. So if it's called something different at your college, fill in the blank, right? I'll probably refer back to course outline of record or just core frequently, but that's what we're talking about. So I also really want to emphasize, and I know that, we have different states that are represented here, different school systems that are represented here, and you may have different, I'm going to use the word protection as faculty, right? Or different purview as faculty. But it really should be a faculty-driven process. We're really lucky in the California community college system. We have the 10+1. We know that this sort of thing lives under our purview. But if you're not sure, that'd be a great thing to find out for your area, right? But the reason why it should be faculty-driven is because curriculum is equally faculty-driven, right? We are the ones who take time, we decide what gets covered in our classes. We should also be the ones who are deciding what those competencies are, right? That's a really important piece, at least for me. I'm a big believer in California, we call it the 10+1 and that faculty purview. But as you look at your course outline of record or whatever that document is called for you, really take a moment to think about what are those overarching concepts for your course, and try to lay them out in terms of skills, competencies. I always like to think of them, sometimes I describe them as like resume skills, right? On the other end of this class, if a student was to put on a resume, I took, Calculus 1, what are the skills that would belong on that resume after that class? What are those things that they should be able to demonstrate? Whether it's knowledge that they can explain or identify back to you, or whether it's something they can physically, write out in front of you. I don't know, I'm thinking like our CTE friends, fix a motor in front of you, right? Beautiful things like that. So that's what you really want to think. What is highlighted there? And the emphasis should always be on what students are learning, where the actions live with the students, not with us as the faculty, right? It is driven by us, but we really aren't measuring, at least with student learning outcomes, we aren't measuring what we presented, what we discussed. It's really about what students have learned on the receiving end of that. And I think that's a really powerful piece of it, because it's almost unique, right? A lot of the other things that drive our courses are very centered around, well, I gave this lecture or I gave this assignment, and it's not always as directly about what students learn. So we also want to be really conscious of the language, and I don't want to step too far over, because I know other folks are going to really focus in on writing those SLOs specifically, but it's really important that we're conscious of the language that we choose, because really these SLOs should be something that your students see. And so they should be, in my opinion, they should be things that are attainable for students, right? We don't need to fill it up with, oh, I'm at my parents and there's a landline here, excuse me. But we shouldn't be filling it up with, jargon. So sorry. I don't even know where their phone is to turn this off.
You're okay, Bethany. It's just a bit of a background noise. We don't hear a word.
I'm very distracted. There's a landline here going off and I'm hearing all these noises. Sorry. I lost my train of thought, but we really want to focus on, I think language that's attainable for students. We don't need to fill it with, academic jargon and things like that, but be really clear and be really specific about what students can learn at the end of our classes. And you could, to me, that really ties into equity. It's putting those learned skills, those measurable skills at the forefront of the content, so that when students sign up for your class, when they see your syllabus right away, it's something that's immediately there, right? We know, again, like I said, I teach math, so my lens is, I might have some topics on there that they haven't learned just yet, like maybe they need to learn how to integrate to find the area under a curve. So they may not know exactly what that means yet, but it's still a very clear and specific amount of language that takes us to where we're heading. Doing okay on questions?
Yes.
All righty. So once you've kind of identified those outcomes, and again, I know we're heading into some of this later, but we do want to draw a line kind of between those bigger ideas, those bigger outcomes, and the little pieces that kind of help them reach those outcomes. So I know that we'll talk about course objectives a little bit later, but I do want to put in your mind that there is that difference between those two things. So again, outcomes are meant to be larger, a little bit more, kind of bird's eye view of those skills and that knowledge that students can demonstrate for us. So at the end, after you've, had time, you've looked over your course outline of record and you've looked over, what's covered in this class, our recommendation is write out a list. What are the outcomes that I want to see? And you may not stick with that list, right? You can edit it. You can, okay, maybe not this one, or, oh, maybe this is actually the same thing. We'll add them together. But really thinking about, what are these learned skills that we want students to have on the other end of it? And then you kind of fill it in with those objectives, those smaller pieces that lead up into what the bigger outcomes are. And we really want to emphasize in this last bullet point, right? When you're teaching what's covered in the course content, which we're supposed to, right? That's why there's a course outline of record giving us what this content covers. When you teach that course content, it ends up covering all of your outcomes, as well as all of those smaller objectives. So you end up really covering everything that you need to cover that's outlined in the course outline of record. And just kind of rounding it up is I really, really recommend working with other people when you do this. Having other perspectives, having other input is really beneficial. For areas that teach some of those stacked courses, again, I'll use my math area as a reference, right? We have sequences of classes. Sometimes it's helpful to talk to the person who teaches the class after me or the class before me. So we have an idea of, again, what are those skills that students need to learn in my class that they need for the next class? That might be a great learning outcome, right? But really talk to other people, hold conversations about it. It doesn't have to be something that you rush into, but really start to outline, I would say, especially for your department, what are the best practices that work for you? And then my recommendation when it comes to your syllabus, put them on the front. Here's a sample of one of my syllabi from over the summer. I put them right in the front under my little Bitmoji there. These are not my favorite outcomes. I do think we need to revisit, which is a later part of our steps that we'll get to, but that's okay. That's part of the process. So that is all that I have. I don't know if there were any questions specific to me, but that's my contact info. And I will stop sharing.
Excellent. This is fantastic, Bethany. I think that it is important for us to keep track of course content as outlined by the official document, because those things are already there. So we don't have to be reinventing the wheel. We just need to refer to what it is that's available, that's at our disposal, translate it into the language of student learning, identify skills and competencies. So thank you very much for articulating this so well. Enrique, please.
All right. So we are heading to our second step, which is the SLO Statement Design and Bloom's Taxonomy. Our presenter will be Alicia Bentecourt from San Diego City College. Alicia, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Let me just make this full screen. All right, Bethany, thank you. Your talk really led into exactly what I am going to be talking about, and that is building the student learning outcome statement and using Bloom's taxonomy to do that. Again, I'm from San Diego City College. This is a new role for me. I'm not new to outcomes, but I am new to being the coordinator for that. But I have really loved these talks, and I have also come to enjoy the outcomes because I think it's just so integral to our to our student learning, but also program review and accreditation. Everything kind of ties in together to create what we really want students to be learning. Okay, so I think Bethany really covered this really well about why student learning outcomes are so important. They represent our learning expectations, not just so that we are aware of those, but more importantly, so that students are aware of what we expect of them, but also what they will be taking from our course. It gives everybody a common understanding of what are the goals of this course. It really guides not just developing a course, but any improvements we have to curriculum and courses and even programs. Our student learning outcomes and assessing those really guide us in making improvements. They give us a measurable way to make sure that students are meeting what they are supposed to in the courses, and not just courses, but once we look at the courses, we're also talking about programs. And it really does strengthen not just the course, but it strengthens the instructor and it strengthens the students through critical thinking and higher order thinking. And all of this comes together to give student learning outcomes a really big importance in our curriculum development and assessments. Okay, I think Bethany did touch on this with the difference between objectives and outcomes. When we look at the performance objectives, these are the smaller skills, tools, and content that really help us to achieve the student learning outcome. So these are really the steps that we use to achieve the student learning outcome in our course. Okay, and when we go through all the course content, we should be hitting on all of these performance objectives. And then together, those really help us to achieve the student learning outcomes. And the student learning outcomes basically are telling us what a student should gain when completing the course. Okay, what program implications does it have? What experience will they have from this? And it really helps to build up to the program outcomes. And the program outcomes are really there for what students should gain when completing their program, whether it's to transfer or for career implications. Okay, so with that, the student learning outcomes and program outcomes really work together to create the institutional student learning outcomes. Okay, so the difference between objectives and outcomes, though, are that the performance objectives are the smaller based, more specific skills and topics that we are going to cover in the course, whereas the student learning outcomes, they really take everything that we've learned and say, this is what we really want students to come away with at the end of this course. Okay, and I do have the example of course objectives from one of my courses and the student learning outcome. And just like Bethany mentioned, our student learning outcomes are definitely in need of a little bit of improvement. And that is why I'm so grateful for this, because this is really going to help guide that conversation this semester. Okay. So how do these student learning outcomes fit in with assessment? Well, how do you know if students are achieving the outcomes? And that is through assessment. We use direct and indirect assessments to know if students are achieving the outcomes. Assessments allow instructors and institutions to collect information. It helps guide curriculum again. It helps guide what we need as far as student services, ways that we're able to make improvements, and everything like that. If there's anything in the chat, please let me know. I have this full screen so I can see some chats, but if there's any questions, please let me know.
We get you covered, Nisha.
Thank you. Okay, and these really just help us to enhance student learning, okay? Because if we are using student learning outcomes the way that we are supposed to, it really should be going into our learning design and our improvement of our curriculum or our programs or our courses. Okay, all of this should be a process that's continuous. Okay, even if we write beautiful student learning outcomes, we should be revising them as we are assessing them to make sure that students are able to reach those objectives, because that's really, those outcomes are really what should be driving our instruction. Okay. So writing student learning outcomes. Student learning outcomes, I love this acronym here with SMART. they should be specific. So student learning outcomes should be clear, concise, and in understandable terms. Not in understandable terms for faculty, but for students and those outside the content area, because that's really where we want these to be. We want students to be able to understand what it is that they're going to be learning. Okay, they need to be measurable. Okay, in order to have an outcome, we need to be able to measure that. Attainable. Students should be able to meet the learning outcome by the content and the course objectives and the instruction that's being provided. Okay, so they do need to be attainable. They need to be relevant. So they should be within the scope of the course and the program. And time-based, this just means that students should be able to achieve these objectives, or I'm sorry, those outcomes within the semester, whether it's an 8-week or 16-week, they should be able to meet these outcomes within that time frame. Okay. And again, I'm going to keep emphasizing this, that student learning outcomes are not the same as performance objectives. Okay. When you write a student learning outcome, they should not include the assessment method that you are going to be using. Okay. The reason for this is you want them to be just general enough that it provides your instructors with academic freedom to teach the course how they're going to, what works best with them, while still meeting the content and giving students the tools that they need to meet their student learning outcomes. So if we include the assessment method, that takes away that freedom to teach and assess in the way that the instructor feels is best. So we don't include the assessment method in our student learning outcome statements. Okay. Again, they need to be clear and concise. Okay. They should be looking at the overall knowledge that we want students to walk away from the course with. Okay. They should not be so specific that they are matching our course objectives, our performance objectives. They should really be giving that overall knowledge. Okay. And again, they need to be accomplished by the end of the course. So we follow that SMART with specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. And then really what we should be doing is we should be bringing in Bloom's taxonomy. Okay. So I really want to go back to this part with giving academic freedom to instructors. We want student learning outcomes to not only give freedom to instructors, but also to be equity driven. So when we give these learning outcomes, we want to be able to meet the needs of all students while still working toward the student learning outcomes. And that is where the instructors come in, because they should be able to take the student learning outcome, notice the needs and diversity of their learners, and be able to basically cater their instruction to get to that point. Okay, so why do we use Bloom's taxonomy? Because Bloom's really provides us with a variety of different verbs or actions and higher levels of thinking, depending on the course that you are giving, the level of the course. We need to determine which of these verbs or which of these areas are we really trying to accomplish with this course. Okay, if we are at a 101 course, we're not going to write objectives that are all up at the evaluate or create level. Okay, but if we have a higher level course, then we should be looking at the higher level of these different categories. Okay, so higher level thinking leads to more meaningful learning. Okay, so we should be using these verbs to determine where should our students' thinking levels be at, and what actions and outcomes will really match that. Okay, so again, it depends on the level of student learning and the appropriate skills that we want from that course. Okay, and we can always begin with one of these Bloom's verbs. Okay, so it should begin with one of the verbs from Bloom's taxonomy. The verb should measure the appropriate skill of the course. Okay, we are looking at the outcome, not the objective. What is the student able to do? What competency do we want them to show? Okay. Is it appropriate for the course? So this is where alignment and mapping comes in. We want to make sure that our learning outcome is appropriate for that course. And again, it needs to be measurable. And the way to do that is we use an action verb from Bloom's, and the demonstrated learning. So identify what students should be able to demonstrate, represent, produce, and then describe what they should be able to demonstrate or represent through that action. Okay, so we can kind of look at it like that. We use a Bloom's verb and then how that demonstrated learning comes through. Okay, these are just some more examples. Again, the slideshow will be available. So this was just more looking at Bloom's, going from the remember all the way up through create. As you move up the hierarchy, you are hitting on higher order thinking, higher level thinking. Here's some more. Okay. And again, this will be shared. Okay, so just looking at some weaker student learning outcomes and creating more solid student learning outcomes. Just looking at this first example, students will understand American immigration policy. We really want to know what it is that will show us that they truly understand that policy. So we need to be just a little bit more specific, and students will be able to describe the history, and we can absolutely measure whether or not they're able to describe. But again, this gives academic freedom to the instructors in that they will be able to determine which method is best for assessing whether students will be able to describe or not. Okay. And then I have some more examples in here that go from kind of weak to solid. Okay, just kind of becoming familiar. Students will become familiar. That is not something that is truly measurable. So when we say that they will be able to identify elements, that becomes measurable. Okay, so these examples are in here for you to look at so that you are able to determine what is a little bit more of a weak student learning outcome and what makes them a little bit more solid. Okay. The one down here with psychology, this is just very wordy and does not really represent clear and concise. Okay. And then finally, this right here is an example of using the assessment portion on an SLO student learning outcome and how we can redefine that student learning outcome, excuse me, to take that away and allow instructors to be able to assess in the way that they see fit. Okay. Okay. So to finish up, in order to begin these discussions, I think one of the hardest parts sometimes is when you want to make edits or revisions, or even just look at your student learning outcomes for a course and program. Some of these conversations are really hard to get started. So where do you begin? Like Bethany mentioned, use the course outline of record. If you don't have a course outline of record, just look at the document that you do have that really lays out the content of the course, the objectives, and that is where you will find your student learning outcomes. Figure out what are the goals of the department and program goals, what are the course goals. Looking at your student learning outcomes, are students being the target audience for these? Okay, really, they should be the target audience for these student learning outcomes. Are they clear and consistent across the sections of a course? Are they meaningful and useful, measurable and feasible within the time frame? And could there be some improvement in the student learning outcomes? Chances are, unless you've done work recently, chances are there can be some improvements. This work is, a constant edit and revision and just thinking about where we're at and where do we want to be. So really, we just want to look to see if there's any edits necessary. Okay. And then once we have them written and edited, a way to look at them and say, are these solid student learning outcomes? Does the outcome support the course goals? Does it describe what the class intends for students to do? Again, detailed and specific, measurable. Is it a result of learning? Can they achieve this outcome after the course is over? Do you have, or can you create an assessment to allow them to demonstrate the outcome? And can we use, excuse me, can we use the results from assessing this outcome to make decisions on how to improve the program, the course, student services, etc.? Okay. And there is my contact information. I guess that was an indicator that I needed to stop talking. Okay, are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Alicia. I tell you, I'm getting some messages here in the chat about this difference between outcome and objective, and I think that very often what I have seen, and perhaps you could comment on it just as well, is that people expect to see a phrase and know right away this is an outcome versus this is an objective, and I just don't know if that's always the case. What matters here is how that statement relates to course outline of record, to the course content. What are the skills and competencies our students are going to be attaining as a result of this outcome? And then the question is, what is the objective in that context? So this is just simply a smaller step that leads you there. And the word that I think you used to articulate this so well is it observable? Is it measurable? Is it something that we can actually attest to the fact that it's taking place or has happened? So that's probably where I think there is this important distinction, that outcomes and objectives could look exactly the same. The difference is at what level they need to be attained in order to move on to bigger outcomes later on. So if you have some thoughts on it, I would certainly appreciate this.
Excuse me. So with the performance objectives, to me, these are more, the objectives are the tools and skills and the smaller specific content that we use to build up to these overarching outcomes. So we may see an objective that some or most of it is included in our outcome, but really we take those steps that are our objectives, and that is how we teach the content of the course. But Shannon's going to speak to this, so maybe she might be a better, I don't want to step too much on her, so maybe we can revisit this question after Shannon's.
Absolutely. Enrique, okay. Go right ahead. Thank you so much, Alicia.
Thank you so much, Alicia. Appreciate it. Our next step is the third step, which is the SLO alignment to program and institutional SLOs. Shannon Jensen from Chaffey College. Take it away, Shannon.
Thank you. I'm just going to take a moment and adjust my little screen share deal. So sorry if it makes everyone dizzy. Okay. All right, so hi everyone. Again, my name is Shannon. I'm a biology professor and a faculty tri-chair for Chaffey College's Outcomes and Assessment Committee. And so today I'll be sharing an overview on alignment. So in the assessment cycle, alignment falls somewhere in between developing your outcomes and assessing them. And there's different words for alignment. Some colleges use the term mapping, some say nesting. Regardless of the terminology, the idea is that we have these different levels of outcomes. We call them course or program or institutional learning outcomes at Chaffey. But ultimately, the goal is that students taking any given course are learning skills and concepts that enhance their success along their academic and career pathways. And so that's what alignment is all about. So all learning outcomes are technically student learning outcomes, but there is a progression as we move from a course SLO to a program to an institutional learning outcome. And of course, we do our assessment at the level of courses. That's the most direct interface with students. And that's not to say, though, that we can only assess course level outcomes. So we talked a little bit so far today about objectives. And one of the things that I want to mention is that in this progression, so to speak, course objectives are sort of the nuts and bolts, the granular things that students are learning, but they are tied to the course learning outcomes. They act as the sort of demonstrable bits and pieces that lead to a more cohesive set of knowledge and skills. And so I'll define a little bit further on the next slide, but what I want to say for now is that when we assess at the course level, we can actually assess program and institutional learning outcomes if alignment is intentional, and if our curriculum activities are authentic in a way that they support or provide evidence for those higher order learning expectations that come with program and institutional learning outcomes. So what this means is that at least the way we're trying to roll things out at Chafee, program and institutional learning outcomes need not be restricted to things like exit interviews or surveys or retrospectives and those sorts of things. You can actually directly assess and provide evidence for program and institutional learning outcomes at the level of the individual course. So here's where we can get into a little bit more of the definitions. So it's a little bit like Bloom's taxonomy, where the outcomes, the learning outcomes themselves actually build upon one another. So I'll explain why you're looking at a picture of a bicycle and its parts. So in biology, we have this concept called emergent properties. The simplest way to explain that is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And so, you know, the different little bits and pieces that you have when they are properly arranged and interconnected, then they form into a fully functional component. So what does this have to do with learning outcomes? Well, as students develop acumen within each course SLO, they are ideally also connecting those course learning outcomes to one another. So they're seeing throughout the course a connection between outcomes they may learn at the beginning and in the middle and in the end of a course, that hopefully also gaining competencies within their desired field of study, as well as across disciplines through their gen ed pattern, and overall building a cohesive set of skills and competencies. And so we can define or distinguish each level discretely with definitions of what is an institutional or a program or a course outcome or even an objective. But the ultimate goal is to ensure that a student can succeed in their academic and career pathway. And so ILOs, or institutional learning outcomes, these are broad cross-curricular outcomes that are reinforced across the entire program of study. They include the gen ed program that a student will complete. They include prerequisites. They include the sequenced courses that a student may take as part of a degree or certificate. They ideally also reflect the college mission and vision, as well as attributes that are valued by most employers, regardless of industry. So things like critical thinking and communication. Program learning outcomes are a cohesive set of discipline-relevant knowledge, skills, and competencies. They are aggregated, however, over a series of courses. And they may be informed in part by external accreditation organizations. So for example, in nursing, automotive tech, EMT, and fire tech are just some examples where there are external accrediting bodies that somewhat inform the development of those program outcomes. And program learning outcomes. Lastly, the course learning outcomes, which are actually demonstrated through completion of the curriculum for an individual course. So they may include a variety of formative and summative assessments, which takes us to course objectives. These are the discrete granular activities and assignments that are part of a unit or a learning module that when taken together, typically provide evidence for or documentation of these higher level learning outcomes, whether they be course, program, or institutional. One other thing that I want to take a moment to mention at this point is the distinction between program learning outcomes and program outcomes, because that comes up fairly regularly in conversations in our at our curriculum committee meetings and so forth. is that when faculty write program learning outcomes for our learning outcomes portion of our program review and for our curriculum process, they tend to write things like students will be prepared and pass the nursing licensing exam with 80% proficiency. And it's like, that's not a learning outcome, that's a program outcome. So just to distinguish, program outcomes are not the same as learning outcomes. Program outcomes to me are, we hope our students will all pass the nursing licensing exam at this level of proficiency. But to me, a learning outcome is, well, what is it that they learned about being a nurse in the course of their program of study that prepares them to achieve that outcome? So I think there's an important distinction between program learning outcomes and program outcomes. And it does manifest sometimes in the process of a course going through curriculum or going through program review. So I thought that was important to mention. Enrique, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, so would that be more of a program goal? What they're thinking about is setting a goal standard instead of the learning, focusing on the learning?
Correct. Yeah, it's an important distinction, I think, because oftentimes it's easy for faculty to say, oh, these are our program learning outcomes, but they're actually not. They're the goals, as you said, Enrique. They are the things we hope we will be able to measure in terms of student achievement, but they don't really explain what it is the students learned that are the points of value for that program. Okay, so what I did here, and I hope you can read the tiny font. I did my best to make it as large as possible. So the idea is that different course objectives support or provide evidence for particular course learning outcomes. And so when we assess students, whether we're using a lab report, a project, a discussion board, a case study, whatever, we're evaluating their level of understanding and evaluating them at the course level. But if alignment is intentional, which is what I'm trying to show here, then the assessment actually does still provide indirect but tangible evidence of students' mastery of a course, program, and potentially also an institutional learning outcome. And that's what the alignment is all about. We have a sample assessment question, and at the bottom there, with a little light bulb, that sample assessment question is actually measuring a couple of different course objectives in our ecology course. So I'm not an ecologist by training, but so explain the importance of stable biomass. And then what that relates to a couple of different bullet point course objectives. But a student's response to that question, whether that's part of a lab report or an exam, that serves as direct assessment of the course learning outcome, which is that the students can explain structural and functional relationships, which is also aligned with a program learning outcome that students will apply the self-correcting and interdisciplinary nature of science to structure function relationships. And then that further aligns to an institutional value of critical thinking and information competency, where students demonstrate critical thinking skills within their discipline. And so the idea that this intentional alignment, where the course learning outcomes, when they were written in such a way as to align directly to the program learning outcomes, and then furthermore to align to the institutional learning outcomes, that alignment is where we can then assess at the course level, but still be providing that direct evidence of student work that shows that the students are learning these things. And so the last piece I'll say is that alignment is just the beginning, because the next important step is developing a straightforward way to communicate the impact of student learning to the stakeholders. And so Chaffey College, I'm actually pretty proud of the way we leveraged the pandemic-inspired mass migration to Canvas. We adopted a set of 10 academic, community, and employability skills, which we call ACEs. We also developed within Canvas the infrastructure to assess these skills and then award digital micro-credentials for these 10 skills. But it all started with that alignment process, which was actually taking place before pandemic and before we were all sort of migrating into the LMS. So with that intentional alignment and the emphasis on the skills that are valued by the future programs of study to which our students go, as well as the future employers, we were able to develop a system where students can earn micro-credentials through our Career Center they can communicate effectively and clearly about the assignments that they completed and how those assignments and assessments are evidence of these career relevant skills. For faculty, this process also allowed us to streamline our SLO assessment process and data management, as well as engage in more authentic and meaningful conversations about closing the loop. And lastly, employers can now see beyond grades because when employers look at a transcript or a degree, they can see what courses the students completed. But with the digital micro-credentialing, the employers can also see the specific skills that students accumulated in their various courses, allowing them to have a better sense of what it is that the student is bringing to the table when they're applying for either a program of study or for a job. So with that, I'll just, my last slide is just to see if anyone has questions, and I'll stop my screen share and I can put my email in the chat for everyone.
Shannon, so what I got was the question about the direct assessment, right? That I think you mentioned something, or maybe this way: student learning outcomes, program learning outcomes, institutional learning outcomes. How are they assessed at the course level? Or we'll talk about direct assessment in just a minute, please.
Yeah, so in Canvas, when an instructor builds an assignment, and let's say they have an assignment that they really feel demonstrates one of the course learning outcomes. So
Sorry, did we lose?
It's Shannon, right? It's not us.
Yes, it's Shannon.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I think she will have to restart the system.
So Jenny, okay, what was your question?
Well, you know, I am sure that Grace is going to touch upon this, so we can just move on to Grace's presentation. That's exactly a good you know lead into what it is that Grace is going to be talking about. So we are fine. When Shannon comes back, and we'll just ask her, and we'll certainly let her speak. Yeah, let's just do that. See, Shannon needs to restart the system. Alrighty then, Enrique, please.
Thank you, everyone. So when Shannon comes in, we'll get her in. But we're now in the fourth step, which is direct assessment and rubric design. Our speaker will be Grace Estrada from Evergreen Valley College, and she's currently one of our coaches, SLO coordinators. Thank you, Grace.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and share my slides. Okay, so as Enrique mentioned, we're in step 4, direct assessment and rubric design. So this is really looking at how do we know what they've learned. This is what it's all about. So I like to think of it as sort of the ABCs of assessment. So I think assessment should be authentic, and that kind of goes with the alignment to what is it that we're asking them to demonstrate, right? Bias reduced. In a perfect world, that would be bias free. But I'm from psychology, and I know that's impossible. And it's really important actually to acknowledge your biases and do what we can to mitigate it. And finally, the C's would be comprehensive and course level. So in terms of authentic, it goes back to what Alicia was talking about. You analyze your student learning outcome, look at the taxonomy and the verbiage. So if the SLO has to do with explaining, and the assessment is a multiple choice test, that doesn't really give students the ability to demonstrate that they can explain a certain concept. So that's what I mean by authentic, that take a really solid look at the SLOs, at the verbiage. What is it? If it's explaining, then give them the opportunity to demonstrate that explanation. The assessment should be aligned with that. And also, you know, Bethany had talked about this too, and Alicia, the specific, measurable, observable demonstration of the competency. So actually, it's really interesting as a psychologist, when I saw the word understand, that is actually something they have to do certain specific actions to demonstrate that they understand, but the understanding itself has to be inferred. So that's one kind of beef I have with Bloom's taxonomy. And finally, we've mentioned this a number of times, direct versus indirect assessment. So direct assessment is when they demonstrate the actual competency or skill. In terms of math, give them a set of math problems, have them solve it. Indirect assessment has to do with opinion and perception. Do you think you can solve the math problems? Do you feel like you are capable of doing this? So we encourage direct assessment because we want them to really demonstrate it to us. Indirect assessment is also important with reflection and those components as well. But in terms of really showing authentic ability that they've learned these components, we want direct assessment. So bias reduced. As I mentioned before, we all have our biases. And instead of dreaming that we can be bias free, we want to acknowledge that we have biases and take steps to mitigate any kind of biases we might have. How do we do this? By having well-designed rubrics. So in a well-designed rubric, you would identify specific criteria, and that would be, you know, on the left side, and I'll show you an example. And you'd also define levels of mastery, and words do matter. So I like to use missing, emerging, beginning, or developing, meeting, and then exceeding. And I'll show you my example. So this is a sample discussion rubric. So as you can see, the criteria are listed on the left so that students can look, and you should be sharing these criteria with your students, by the rubrics with your students, by the way. I always share them beforehand and I discuss it with them so they know exactly what my expectations are with the assignment. So for example, this is for a discussion. Reading reflection demonstrates understanding and reflection of the prompt and readings. Peer response evidences reflection on peer posts and reference back to the readings. And finally, I call it my SQT, style, quantity, and timeliness. Do they write in complete sentences, meet minimum word count, submit responses by due date? So this discussion rubric, as Shannon was discussing, you can actually use this as a direct assessment of a program learning outcome or an institutional learning outcome, such as communication. Because when they're in the discussion, this is communication that they're doing. And what are my criteria? Well, I have exceeding. I like to have what I want them to do most right beside the criteria. So I have exceeding, meeting, and developing, and missing. And you can decide the point total based on what you have. But what I like to do here is indicate specific criteria that they should be meeting. So when they get their grade, they know exactly why they received a grade. And, you know, in Canvas, it makes it really easy. You just kind of click, 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 and there it is. And also what's great in Canvas is that you can align the student learning outcomes with a specific assignment, just like with a discussion. So finally, the C is comprehensive and course level. When we talk about assessments, you'll hear two terms very frequently. That's formative and summative assessments. So a formative assessment would be the little ways that you do kind of a check-in with the students. How are they doing with learning the material? It's used throughout the course. They are low stakes assessments, and they could even be ungraded, just opportunities for students to determine, are they actually acquiring the material and the competency? So what do instructors do in formative assessments? They give specific and detailed feedback. The idea with formative assessments is you're giving them the opportunity to improve. And students love it because they get to revise and resubmit, or maybe they'll redo an assignment. They'll do an assignment that's very similar to demonstrate that they've looked at your feedback and they've learned from it. Summative assessments, on the other hand, they're the end of course demonstration of a competency, maybe a research paper, some kind of project, a big presentation. These are high stakes assignments. Now we talk about equity. we are really discouraging super high stakes assignments. We still want you to have the end of course demonstration of the competency, but maybe don't make that 50% of your grade. You know, we do want, so we want to acknowledge that students learn differently and demonstrate their knowledge differently. And so I would definitely encourage smaller formative assignments that can give them that opportunity and also really learn from your feedback. So in summary, we want our assessments to be authentic, right? The competency should be based on the course SLO, should be bias reduced, have clear and concise rubrics, set your expectations, convey them, communicate them with your students so that they know what is expected of them and where their grade is coming from. And finally, comprehensive and course level. And I really encourage both formative and summative types to be used. So if there are any questions, here's my contact information. Thank you.
So, well, thank you, Grace. Fantastic work. We do have a question about the BA or BS programs, right? Should they have the same program learning outcomes? So this question is whether the outcomes can be shared. And I think that, you know, I don't have any answers except for the, I think that the question here is not whether they could be shared, because nobody says that they can't be, or if there is any overlap. The bottom line is that, you know, I believe we've said it from the very beginning. What is the content, right? What is the program content? What is it that we want students to acquire? So if the program outcomes overlap between the BS program and BA program, well, then that's just the nature of it. But I'm not going to question that, in a sense that there isn't really any guideline from anyone out there that I can think of that who would help us figure this out one way or the other. I don't think it's necessary to even figure this out. It's just, this is our program learning outcome, and this is a different program learning outcome. They can exist as where they are. So if anyone has any more thoughts on this, you're certainly welcome to speak. And I think Bethany addressed that. Okay, so thank you very much. All right, super. Grace, thank you very much. Any more questions, comments? All right. Enrique, please.
Thank you very much, Grace. We're going to be going to step number 5, which is the SLO assessment data analysis, and Tricia Wiggling from Long Beach City College. Ready, Tricia?
Okay, so we are focused on data analysis in step 5, and so in a kind of from an overarching perspective with data analysis, of course, it follows from our course program and institutional assessment data, right? The data has to be collected. If we aren't collecting data, if our faculty aren't assessing, there's not going to be anything for us to analyze. But then after students' performance is assessed, data can be analyzed really for improvement at each level, and even from a strengths-based perspective, right? If folks are doing very well, we can leverage strengths just in the same way that we can address weaknesses. And that analysis will help us, as mentioned here, to identify areas of strength and weakness with the goal that we would take action to improve student learning based on what we see. So there's a lot that can be said about data analysis, but I felt that for my presentation, it might be most helpful to show an example or a few examples related to how data analysis occurs at Long Beach City College. And so I just wanted to mention that we are on a 2-year SLO cycle where assessment is occurring in an ongoing way, but then every other year faculty spend a significant amount of time to analyze and to take action on their data. So last year was an assessment year. And so our faculty were focused on developing and building robust assessments to obtain instructionally meaningful results. All of our results of assessment are collected on Canvas. And so then 2 years ago in our SLO cycle, and again this year, visualized results data is presented in Tableau to our faculty so that they can see these areas of weakness and strength. The analysis of that data occurs, and we really encourage the analysis of data to take place in faculty inquiry groups, right? Maybe by a specific course level or at the program level, so that stakeholders can determine why these areas exist and begin to converse about how to address the weaknesses and how to leverage the strengths. And then we also have discovered that analysis is a lot more enterable with what we call our analysis and action guide worksheet. So we present this guide worksheet to our faculty at the course level and at the program level. And it allows folks, whether they feel like they are data people or whether they don't, to enter into the data and to begin to look at it and analyze it. At the course level and the program level, analysis is conducted by faculty who teach the courses or who teach within the programs. But at the institution level, analysis is conducted by the college's Assessment of Student Learning Outcomes subcommittee. And that's a subcommittee composed of faculty, staff, and administrators. But regardless of the group that's conducting the assessment, or not the assessment, but the analysis, we're really encouraging folks to have really rich, deep, and meaningful conversations about the data that they're looking at, right? And so I thought I'd give 2 examples. We have a Read 82 course on our campus. It's a quiz-based assessment. In this assessment, we provide a reading selection. The passage is current and relevant to the students, and they have adequate prior knowledge to approach the assessment competently. It's 15 questions. It calls for the demonstration of their skills in an authentic task, right? Questions are asked from various angles, and they allow students multiple opportunities to demonstrate their understanding. So it's not just kind of a once-off. And when the results come in, they look something like this in Tableau, and I've broken it up so that it fits on my screen here. But we can see the participation rate, which clearly needs some improvement. But we can also see a comparison between the course success rate and the average assessment score, which sometimes is indicative of, if there's a big gap between these things, that there are other factors at play in student achievement, right? As far as course success versus assessment scores. And Tableau allows us to break down the quiz, and we get question level results. So we can see where the areas of strength and weakness lie. Clearly, our students are still struggling to identify a main idea and to differentiate that between the supporting details and the other skills. Sometimes they struggle with inferences as well. So in addition, it allows us to disaggregate our results. Tableau allows us to disaggregate our results by race and ethnicity and by gender, even at the question level, right? So it gives us a lot of opportunity to have rich conversations and real dialogue concerning what we're noticing, what we've been observing. And of course, it is a campus-wide perspective, right? Because it covers 366 students, this particular assessment did. So we're not just getting one faculty member's course or one section. We're not getting just one modality. Of course, we can disaggregate it by modality as well. So if you want to look at just how our online students are doing or just how our face-to-face students are doing, we can see those kinds of results as well. And so this is a quick look at what our data looks like. And then in Education 20, this is a rubric-based assessment, right? It's not a quiz-based assessment, it's rubric. And this one in particular is a portfolio assessment. So students have been working toward these various goals throughout their time in the course. And these ones, this rubric is from the analysis and action cycle 2 years ago. So you can see that there are the criteria here, that it's marked A, B, C, D, F, right? but that there are the skills listed as far as what it would take for students to get the kind of score they want. I really loved Grace's example of her rubric, right? And our faculty are really moving away from this A, B, C, D language to the more the excelling, the meeting, the developing, the emerging kind of language, so that students can really see where they are in the process. It's not marked by a letter grade that has all kinds of loaded connotations now, but it's really indicated by the type of where they are in their development of this skill or their ability to meet this particular skill. So our Tableau dashboard does the same thing for rubric-based assessments. It gives our participation rate, the comparison between the course success and average success, and our rubric category level results. As you can see here, our students were struggling more with their current issue and education research report. So then that gives faculty who teach the course the opportunity to have some conversations. What's going on with this particular content in our course? And of course, the SLO is related to demonstrating an understanding of the concepts and issues related to teaching. So they should have an understanding of current issues in education, right, as part of their ability to meet the student learning outcome. And again, we can disaggregate by race and ethnicity and by gender. And so it's so helpful to have data visualized, because then faculty can sit down and instead of seeing a spreadsheet and numbers, they can see pictures and colors and they can really enter into the data. But where we found it to be really enterable and really helpful is here in what we call our course SLO analysis and action guide. And so we ask faculty to focus in on 3 main components for their analysis. What is your participation rate? Did you reach 80%? How might your department faculty increase it, right? Because if we don't have the participation, we might not get the expanded global view, right? We might be missing something. And then, what was your overall results analysis? Did it meet our expected level of achievement? Did you find anything interesting as you compared the average assessment score to the overall course success rate? And then analyze that question level or rubric category level results and discuss ways to address areas that need improvement. But then also, if the assessment results were particularly strong, if they met that 70% expected level of achievement, what were some strengths that you noticed, right? Are those things that we can leverage in other courses or in other areas? Part 3 was to focus on equity. What were our highest and lowest performing groups? What were our highest and lowest performing modalities and genders, and then to really reflect on the curriculum and instruction that may have had an impact on these things, and discuss any potential strategies to close these equity gaps. And then our 4th part is action, and I'm not going to talk too much about action because that's step 6. It's involved with closing the loop, and we have another presenter, so I don't want to go into that too much here. But we ask, at least in our area, once faculty have sat down, they've looked at the data together, they've had conversations, they filled this document out, then we ask them to determine actions that they're going to take to address those weaknesses or to leverage those strengths. And we ask them to focus specifically 1 action on their overall analysis and 1 action on their equity piece, so that we're coming at our analysis and taking action from a few different angles. And then at the program level, we also have visualized data. Now, these scores represent an aggregate of our course SLO to program SLO mapping. So we do have that alignment piece in place. And so this is an aggregate of all of the courses that have been mapped to this program level SLO. And so we can see here in our program, just at a quick glance, our students are meeting program SLO number 1 at a strong rate. They are meeting the level, the expected level of expectation for PSLO 3, but they're falling just short with PSLO 2. We also have, I don't know what happened there, but we also have the way to show. Let me go back here really quickly. So when we click on Tableau, if you were to see the live version, we can click this button that says show. And then what happens is this view where we can see every single one of the mapped course SLOs and their aggregate score and how those led to their individual score and how those led to the aggregate score. So we can then break it down even at the course level. This is where students are struggling in our courses. What kind of supports or emphasis could we put in programmatically that would help students in all of our courses to better meet these skills, right? Or these competencies that we're asking them to meet by the time they leave our programs. And then again, even with that show version, you can disaggregate by race, ethnicity, gender, modality. We even have a filter now to differentiate between those who are majors, student majors who major in art history versus those who are maybe just taking courses as part of their general education curriculum. And then we also have a program SLO analysis and action guide. So again, there's the reflection on the last iteration of the program analysis and action. There's an overall results analysis, an equity analysis, and actions, right? And so again, as program faculty get together and they look at this data, they're considering all the various courses that are in the program and the things that they're teaching. They're looking at the strengths and the weaknesses, and they're really able to have conversations about what's going well, what maybe isn't seen in the data that they can add to the conversation, right? But then also to really dig into the data and to figure out the thing, to glean any insights that maybe they wouldn't have known or wouldn't have seen if it hadn't all been put together in visual form for them. And then just having the worksheet to work through together with asking these kinds of guiding questions, I think, again, it makes data analysis a little bit more enterable. And then at the institution level, we also have our data displayed in Tableau, visualized for us. We have the average assessment score. But then we also break down our results by unit completion at the institution with the view or the thought that as students progress through the institution, they're exposed to more and more classes, more and more program content, and ultimately they're even better able to meet these institutional learning outcomes, right? So we have our participation, we have our average assessment score, and we see this unit breakdown. And so here, at least for ISLO 3, it looks pretty good. It feels pretty good, right? It seems like our students are meeting their expected level of achievement by the time they leave us. But what our assessment of student learning outcomes subcommittee found so fascinating and so helpful is when we broke it down by unit completion and we disaggregated by race, ethnicity, and gender, we found that our students of color who have taken fewer units at the institution struggle more to meet this learning outcome content. And so that's helpful to guide us in the kinds of actions we may want to take to provide additional supports or to expose our students to this kind of content earlier and to strengthen their ability to meet this content at an earlier point in their educational journey, in their academic and career pathways. And so again, really this data analysis or seeing the data visualized, it leads to insights that we couldn't glean in any other way. And so with our ISLOs, I probably should have mentioned, we also have our course SLO to ISLO mapping or alignment that helps us to gather these results. But we also then, based on that course SLO to institutional SLO mapping, once those courses are identified, we do have an additional rubric that we use as a direct measure of assessment. So faculty who teach in those aligned or mapped courses complete a direct assessment, a rubric related to this institutional, these ISLOs, to help us to gather this kind of ISLO data for analysis. And then ultimately, again, our ASLO Assessment of Student Learning Outcomes Subcommittee, we use this ISLO Analysis and Action Guide to analyze and take action. And so what we ask the committee members to do is to conduct the analysis together in small groups. And then during our committee meetings, we discuss the actions, right? And so we spend significant time. I think we spent time at least 3 separate ASLO subcommittee meetings when we were in our analysis and action phase 2 years ago. And we're gearing up to do this again with a more robust set of data, having passed through it before, having had experience with our analysis and action guides. And so I guess my view and my hope is that we will continue to have more robust conversations based on better assessments that will allow us to really glean deeper, richer insights, learn how to address weaknesses, learn how to leverage strengths, so that we can, obviously, the goal is to take action to improve student learning. And so that is what I have for you. This is my contact information. And if you have questions, I'm happy to take them.
Enrique, yes, go ahead. There is tons of questions I see. Go right ahead.
You go ahead, Jared, before I go, yes.
Certainly. So let me see here. First of all, Shannon is back, and she will go ahead and address the questions in Canvas. Trisha, the question that comes to my mind, first of all, there is a lot of people asking, trying to make sure that you, if at all possible, that you make your resources available to them. So again, we'll try to put it all together as part of the package and with your contact information and all this, right? So again, there's quite a bit of really great comments there. The question that I have for you is if you could please comment on the role of the students, right? All this data, we collect assessment data. Everything's nice and peachy in the Tableau universe, and I tell you that the work that you described that faculty are undertaking is just truly remarkable. So this is just fantastic. The question that I have is how are students at all involved in this? Do they benefit from any of those analysis directly, in a sense that, do your faculty actually share, hey guys, look, this is what you've learned in the course or program?
Well, I mean, I think that their SLO results are typically available to them. They can see, like, if they take an SLO assessment quiz, they can see where that, what their strengths and weaknesses are. And I think it depends. I think, if it's the summative assessment on the last day of the semester, then they may not have the opportunity to share out or to hear, the direct result from their instructors. But I do think that, I mean, I can just speak for some of the faculty that I work more closely with. I think that they can, and even I in my own courses, I can say, look, we really looked at what was going on, and it seems like these are some of the trickiest areas in the course. And so we're going to spend more time in our in-class time and online working with some of these concepts, because they're very crucial and they seem to be the trickiest ones for students to master based on all of our, assessments. And so definitely we kind of try to share those things as much as we can, and within our ability and within the appropriate context, for sure.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much for addressing this. Let me see here. Jamie has a question about the 15 questions all addressing the same SLO. Would you please elaborate on this? I'm not quite clear on this. Jamie, if you could please.
Sure. There was a slide. There was a slide showing 15 questions. And I think my question was, there was a follow-up comment about like one specific area that was a challenge. I was just wondering if they were all
Yes, that's a great question, Jamie. Anyway, it was very interesting what our faculty decided. So for the longest time in our reading courses, faculty really had a hard time figuring out, like, how can we pull out different SLOs for a reading course? This is such an overlapped and nuanced set of skills, and it just seems inauthentic to assess vocabulary on one reading assignment and then comprehension on another reading assignment. How do you do this, right? And so they were really, firm, no, it's inauthentic. If we want good results, we have to have an authentic assessment. And so those 15 questions addressed 2 student learning outcomes. But after looking at the results, faculty realized pretty quickly that they needed to separate out the assessments. They could still have 2 quizzes based on the same passage, but what they discovered is when they separated those out, that the strength of students' ability to meet the vocabulary, you know, recognizing unfamiliar terms in text, right? That their strength in meeting that was combined with their weakness in comprehension. And so when the assessment scores were tied together, it overly inflated. And so it demonstrated that students were meeting the 2 student learning outcomes, but actually when we separated them out, students weren't meeting this comprehension skills, the comprehension SLO. So that ended up being a very helpful insight in separating out our questions to direct them toward the 2 separate SLOs. And then, but still there are many skills that go into comprehension, being able to draw an inference, being able to understand a main idea, figuring out what the supporting evidence is, you know, differentiating between those things. So yes, there would still be a number of questions that would address those various topics still within the same quiz. So now we have, you know, the 2 separated quizzes, but I still think our comprehension quiz is still maybe 10 to 15 questions long. I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope.
Jamie, you okay? You're okay there?
Looks like it from the chat.
Oh yeah. Perfect. Sounds good then. Thank you so much. Tricia, great work. Excellent. Thank you very much. Could we go back for just a moment to Shannon's conversation about Rubric? If you're ready, Shannon, are you available to speak just a little bit, just to finish your thought from, you know, a few minutes ago?
Yeah, sorry for unstable internet. So what we do at the course level is when an instructor creates an assignment or assessment in Canvas, they can use the Rubric tool and they can attach a rubric to that assignment or assessment. And then the infrastructure that we developed allows for faculty to import the ACEs, institutional learning outcomes, as well as hopefully down the line program and course learning outcomes folders, where those outcomes can be attached to the rubric for the assignment. And so when faculty know they are assessing, let's say, a communication skill or a digital fluency skill or whatever, they can add that particular learning outcome to their rubric. And then the way that it's evaluated is they are able to check a little box, or in this case, uncheck a box. And then that rubric criterion is added to the rubric, but doesn't result in a change in scoring. So they have their graded components worth whatever points they want, plus the additional skills assessment, which are not affecting the grade at all. And so they can give an honest assessment of whether the students succeeded at demonstrating that particular skill on that particular assignment or assessment. There's typically a question from faculty, well, don't students who get an A on the assignment get a good score on the skills? And then also, don't students that do poorly on the graded part, won't they just not demonstrate the skill? That's not always quite the case. That's not always universally true. Some students do demonstrate skills, but they messed up some other part of the assignment and their grade is impacted, but they still demonstrated a skill. So I mean, it stands to reason logically that most of the time when students do well on an assignment, they also demonstrated those academic, community, and employability skills, but not always.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any more questions? Let me see here. I think we are okay with the chat. Okay, before we run out of time, Enrique, please.
Real quick, just wanted to emphasize that for the group that Jadic put the guide to student learning assessment. Go back in the chat, please. refer to that, because if you have any other questions, I highly encourage you to read that guide. And keep in mind that different institutions, different coordinators have different systems, guidelines and what have you. But this will give you a reference what we're doing. As Tricia mentioned, at Long Beach, they use a system. They have their data analysis, and they collect data analysis every 2 years. We do it every year, so it's totally different in how you do in California or outside California. So just keep in mind for the viewers that the guide is there for your reference.
Right on. And we do have Patty. Enrique, would you like to introduce Patty Manley?
Yes. Last but not least, in closing the loop of the talking about the 6 steps of implementation, is closing the loop is Patty Manley from San Diego Miramar College. Patty, you ready? You muted, Patty?
There we go. I apologize. All right, so I'm last, and that's okay. And we don't have much time left, and that's okay, because it really fits with my topic, which is closing the loop, because I don't want you to give up, and I don't want you to walk away, and I don't want you to stop until you do this step. Because if you do the assessments and you look at the data and you don't do anything with it, then you've missed that really important closing, if you will. Let me move my down here. For some reason, my hang on a second, my screen is not letting me. There we go. All right, so I put this little statement on here because I think it's really important to understand what closing the loop means. You're really taking the analysis from the outcomes, and you're going to use those results to make changes and to improve student learning. And then you're going to reassess your outcomes in order to determine what effect those changes had. So you're going to assess, you're going to analyze the data, you're going to take some action, make some changes, and then you're going to reassess again. And you're going to look at, did those changes have any impact on student learning? And when we talk about closing the loop, this is just a little visual I put together. This is the assessment process. And you could break this down into multiple
Patty,
steps.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
Patty,
sir.
may I interrupt you? Yeah, are you moving your slides or?
I am. Did it not move?
No.
Uh-oh. Let me try to share again here. Hold on a second, because I'm definitely sharing my slides. That's what I'll do. All right, let's see if this works. Can you see my screen now? Yes? All right.
Yes.
All right, so does it change? Is it
Yes.
changing?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Whew, got me scared there for a minute. All right, so we're going to be closing the loop, which means that you're going to be looking at your data, determining what kinds of actions or steps you need to take based on those results. And then you're going to reassess again, either in your next year or your next cycle, whatever your school's pattern is. And then I put this image together to kind of show you the various steps in the process that we've all talked about. You're going to identify or create your outcomes. You're going to figure out your assessment method. You're going to collect that data through the assessments. You're going to analyze the data. And then I believe that Tricia mentioned this, you're going to share the data. It's really important to share the data and to talk about it. You just don't take this data in your own little department, if you're the chair of the department, and put it in a folder or put it in your data management system and nobody knows what's going on. And you're going to share it with your students too, as Tricia said as well, as often as you can, as much as you can. Sometimes, as she said, if it's the end of the semester, then you probably don't have a lot of opportunities to do that. But along the way, through the use of the rubrics and Canvas or whatever system you're using, you do have opportunities to share the data with your students as well. And then you're also going to take action. And that's what the closing the loop is, taking action, taking those next steps, if you will. And we always have to keep in mind that the purpose of assessment is to improve student learning. That's the reason why we're doing this in the first place. So if we create our outcomes, we create our assessment methods, we give the assessments, we collect the data, we analyze the data, and we don't do anything with it, then we're not really making that effort to improve student learning. And that's what we really need to keep going back to. What's the whole purpose of assessment? So now we have our data. You know, we've all seen these terms: met, not met, partial met. Now what? Now what do you do? As you're looking at your data, do you see evidence of student learning? Do you see gaps in the skills or abilities of certain students or demographic students or students overall? And do you see gaps in the instructional experience? If you see some of these things, even if you have all met and you've met your goals, whatever your target goal is for your assessment, you still need to take these next steps. So one of the first things that you should be doing is you need to evaluate the assessment process itself. Are your outcomes still appropriate? If you haven't revised your outcomes in a few years, but maybe you've changed your course content or you've changed the instructional method, then maybe you need to go back and look at your outcomes. And we've talked about this. A few of the presenters said, here's my outcomes. Yeah, maybe they need a little revision. Maybe they need a little work. And that's always something you want to do. You should also be looking at, are you collecting data from the right people in the right system and the right source? Are you collecting data at the right time? If you're just doing those formative assessments once and you don't go back and look at it again, you don't do it again, then maybe you're not collecting data at the right time. If you're collecting data, but you haven't taught the content yet or the skill yet, then you're not collecting data at the right time. Are you using the best or the most appropriate assessment method? And someone mentioned this as too, if you're asking them to produce a product, but that's not what your assessment method is really addressing, then you need to look at your assessment method. And are you collecting data that matches the intent of your outcome? And we see this a lot, that we write an outcome, we give the assessment, but the data we get back doesn't really address our outcome. And so we need to look at that too. We may need to either redo the outcome, revise the outcome, or maybe we need to revise the assessment method, but we really need to look at, are we collecting the data that we intend to collect, that we really want to collect? And then are we able to conclusively determine the degree to which outcomes are met with our data? So we need to make sure that we go through each one of these steps, each one of these processes as we look at our data and as we start to close this loop. So what can we do? We can take some actions. We can refine our SLO statements. We can change the methods or the measures. We can change where the data is collected or how it's collected. We can actually collect additional data. And maybe we can improve our data reporting or dissemination of the mechanisms that we use. So we have lots of ways that we should consider once we have our data in order to take next steps. And I'm going to go through a few more of these. One of the things we can do is we can look at how we're actually teaching the content. Do we need to change maybe the course assignments? I think somebody mentioned, one of the other presenters mentioned that as well. Maybe we need to go back and look at the assignment. Can we add more active learning components to the course? Maybe we need to change textbooks. If our textbooks don't contain the material or the content that we're asking our students to be able to understand or know, then maybe we need to change the materials that we're providing to them. And then are we giving them enough feedback? And are we providing them opportunities to do some maybe peer-assisted learning? I think somebody mentioned, these formative assessments. If we do them, but we don't provide students with feedback and give them opportunities to redo those and learn further, this is something we can go back and we can do and see if it changes student learning and improves student learning. We should also evaluate our faculty. Are our faculty sufficiently trained and supported? What can we do? Maybe we need to have some professional development opportunities for our faculty. Can we provide teaching assistants or peer mentors to the faculty? Maybe they need some specialized support. Maybe we need some library support, some technology support. So we need to always, it's student driven, it's pedagogy, but it's also, let's look at our faculty. And sometimes this can be a little sensitive area. If you see a particular faculty's results that maybe differ greatly from another or from the groups overall, then maybe you want to look at that. What is that instructor doing that is different, that is causing such a significant difference in results? So maybe those faculty need some additional support. Maybe we need additional classroom resources. One thing that came to mind was, one of our instructors teaches anthropology, and they have these little heads and skulls and things like that, body parts. If all the classrooms don't have that, then maybe one classroom has an advantage, or one set of students has an advantage over other students in other classrooms. So evaluate the faculty as well. And then evaluate the curriculum. Do we need to add some prerequisites or change our prerequisites? Do we need to add some GE requirements? Maybe we need to add some more required courses. Do we need to replace some courses? Maybe we need to look at the course sequencing. Maybe this course doesn't belong in this particular place in that course sequencing. Can we add some internships, some labs, or other hands-on opportunities that would help students meet these course outcomes and improve their learning? And we also need to look at, are we supporting students, and how are we supporting students? Can we provide them tutors? Maybe they need more online resources if it's an online course. Maybe we need to improve our advising to students to make sure they're taking the right courses. Pardon me? I'm sorry. And maybe we need to provide some resources to encourage maybe some community building among students and between students and faculty. So we need to evaluate how we're supporting students as well in order to help them improve their learning. So what can we do? Let's take some actions. We can revise or change the process. We can revise or change how we're teaching the content. We can provide support for faculty. We can revise or change the curriculum. We can provide for support for students. And we can even use all this data to maybe request needed resources. And I know I've gone through this pretty quickly, but I want to give it a little bit of time at the end for questions, overall questions as well. And last but not least is we can include this data in our program review. And it's important to, we've talked about how do we go from objectives to outcomes, to course outcomes, to program level outcomes, to institutional level outcomes. That data doesn't stay stagnant just within the course. We need to share it out and use it in other places across your campus. This data can help you provide supporting information for new positions, maybe need new faculties, new tutors, new TAs, new research assistants, whatever. It can provide supporting data for equipment and resources. You can use that data to inform or eliminate a program, which is scary sometimes, or to inform or make changes to a course or a program. You can use it to create partnerships. Maybe you want to create a partnership. At one of the campuses I taught at, we had an English and history partnership. So because history is heavy in writing, our students, once we married them with the English writing course, then their student learning improved because they were demonstrating learning through a written form. And we can also use this data to write grant proposals, especially at the time we're in now. There's grant monies available if we need additional resources or materials or professional development. We can use that data to help write grant proposals as well. So I've covered a lot of information. I know I went a little quickly. I can go back a little bit and just talk about what do you do? Just don't be stagnant. Work on closing that loop. Take some actions, make some change, improve the process, because your overall intent is to improve student learning and not just let that data sit on your data management system in a folder on your chair's, your department chair's desk, but to actually do something with it once you have it. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Patty.
Questions?
Yes,
I have my content, my contact information here as well.
great work. This is really truly a lot of information. Again, you did say this needs to be used to improve student learning, and that's exactly what it is. That's why we are engaging the discussion in those processes and description of what it is that we do on our campuses. Patty, so from your perspective, how do you think students are involved in these discussions, if at all? How do faculty engage the students? How do they make them aware that, hey, guess what? Those skills and competencies are important to you?
I think it's important that at our campus, we ask our instructors to share the outcomes at the beginning of the semester. And so we talk about them when they're on your syllabi, we talk about why they're important. We ask our instructors to put their outcomes on their assessments. Here's your assessment, and here's the outcome that this assignment, whatever it is, discussion board, whatever it is focused on. Because I think one of the very first presenters said, if we're not teaching to SLOs, what are we teaching? So we ask our instructors to put your outcomes on the actual assessments and tell the students, while you're doing this, whatever writing assignment, exam, whatever it is, this is the outcomes that we're asking you to demonstrate that you can do. We also ask our instructors to, after they have these, whether they're formative assessments or summative assessments, to actually talk to the students and ask them, why not ask them, why was that more difficult? Why do you think you didn't do well? Have an overall class discussion. Do you feel that you were taught this content, given opportunities to demonstrate your skill prior to taking the assessment? So it's important that you do talk to students and not just let this sit on a shelf someplace.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much, Patty. Well, let's see here. Anybody else? I know. Okay, Shannon. Oh, Jacqueline, would you please just say a few words about your collaboration around Canvas? I know that Michelle pitched into the discussion as well. If you could please perhaps put some closure to it so that we know how we can contact you.
Yeah, that was actually a side conversation with Shannon. Thank you so much, Shannon. But I'm not able to reach her with chat, so I'm sorry if it was a distraction to everybody. I was expressing my frustration with Canvas, that in our program, which is a graduate level program, physical therapy, that has an external accreditor, CAPTE, we have to align to multiple outcomes, including the accreditation standards and the ISLO, as well as the course level outcomes. And what I need to be able to do for program level assessment is to track, say, for instance, CAPTE Standard 7A, which is basic information about systems. I need to be able to draw assessment data from multiple courses across the curriculum to get an overview of how students are performing in that standard. And I cannot do that in Canvas. Canvas does really well at course level assessment. So our program has been using ExamSoft for that. So I think it was last year that Michelle had proposed the idea of, let's get a work group together and talk about some of the best ways that all of us have found to leverage Canvas. So we were chatting about whether we should resurrect that group.
Excellent. I think that would be a great collaboration. So yes, yeah, sure. So Michelle is sharing her email address. I'm sure you guys can stay in touch and put it together. I'll be happy to contribute or make space for it as well. We can probably make it happen. Thank you so much. Well, hey, let me see here. Anything else that's there in the chat that we need to be paying attention to? Che is asking about the SLOs, how they help students prepare for transfer versus employment. We are going to have one of those steps includes that conversation as well. So it's a topic for a really longer conversation. So we'll be happy to address that in the future. Anybody else? Okay, yes, please. My suggestion would be, please, if you're receiving emails from myself or pretty much any one of the coaches, anyone from our group here, please let us know and we'll put together a group that's going to be exploring issues around Canvas. I think that's a great idea. I'm sure we can all learn from each other. So thank you very much, Jacqueline, for bringing it up, and Shannon, Michelle, we will be happy to do that. I think that would be a fantastic collaboration. As a matter of fact, we do have one of the Friday SLO talks. I believe one of the last ones that is specifically devoted to Canvas and how we keep track of data. So it would be just fantastic to have that information included. Okay, yes, and the next SLO talk is going to be September 23rd. So here's a link to that if you'd like to register right here. Yes, I can certainly turn off the recording. Thank you, Enrique. Sorry.